This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations, a show about innovation, creativity, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here each and every Sunday sharing with you the lessons learned, scars earned about taking your idea and turning it into a game-changing breakthrough product or service. Each week, we typically will bring in guests. In some cases, it'll just be an Ask Phil. We actually have an Ask Phil segment coming up here in a couple of weeks. So if you've got questions that you would like answered during the show, just drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Any questions you might have, we'll add them to the list. And when we do the Ask Phil shows, which are just periodically throughout the year, that's an opportunity to get your question asked and get that included in the show. So go ahead and get those to me. One of the things that we've been talking about, we talked about this about a month or maybe 6 weeks ago, was around how do you predict the future? What is that ability, or how do you improve that ability to go look at those new things that are coming, kind of things that are over the horizon, looking for those weak signals? You can go back and find that show. We actually gave out, or I made available, a PDF version of what I call an innovation roadmap. These are documents that I have built out throughout my career so that I can convince the senior executives, whether it was when I was CTO at Hewlett Packard or even in my current role with my board of directors, around those things in the future that are going to have a huge impact on the business. So you've heard my view of this, but there's a lot of people out there that do this. Some of them have been doing it for quite a while, or entire organizations that have been doing this for quite a while. One of those organizations, or one of those sites that I hope all of you have been tracking and following, is TrendWatching. TrendWatching's been a site that's been out there for quite some time. It really takes that view of what are those next things that are coming? What are those things that are going to have a huge impact on your business? And so today we have Maxwell Luthi. Maxwell is the Director of Trends and Insights at TrendWatching. He's part of a group, 4 people who've just recently, well, I shouldn't say just recently, it was in 2015, a Wiley book about trend-driven innovation. Maxwell, thanks again for taking the time out and joining us today for the show.
It's entirely my pleasure. I'm very happy to be on the show today.
So, Maxwell, one of the things that I think we should start off with is just describing what the heck a trend is, because the word is kind of a loaded word. So some people may have an opinion on what it is or what it isn't. So give us yours and TrendWatching's definition of when you say a trend, what is it you're talking about?
Of course. Well, I mean, it is a very heavily loaded word. I'm sure, my in-laws still aren't exactly sure what kind of trends I'm tracking. A lot of people assume we're tracking fashion trends, what silhouette's going to be hot next season. Another assumption is that, we're just focusing on technology trends, and technology is a major driver of change, and we love technology at TrendWatching. But if you over-focus on the tech trends, you tend to forget the human needs and wants that the tech should be resolving. So we're officially a consumer trends company. We're obsessed with consumers. And our definition of a consumer trend is a new manifestation among people in behavior, attitude, or expectation of a fundamental human want or need. And you can tell I've said that a few times. But I think one of the key things in our definition, there's 2 key things. First of all, fundamental human needs and wants or desires are at the heart of the trends that we track, and these don't change that quickly. The desire for status, the desire for connection, the desire for convenience. And the other thing from that definition is about expectations. At TrendWatching, we really are all about helping you understand the emerging expectations that your customers or your potential customers will have in the coming months and years.
And so part of the trend watching is also finding those trends that are new, but also those trends that are kind of getting a little old, right? That are kind of fading away with whatever the changes are. Is that correct, or?
Yes, it sort of is correct. I mean, I think almost rather than identifying what's old, we're constantly looking at how it's evolving. So we can have, the way consumers approach sustainability. This has been happening in certain parts of the world. They're concerns about the eco credentials of the products they buy for 10 to 20 years, depending on which consumers you're talking about. Does that mean that we're now saying that's old hat? No, but we're looking at sort of new developments within that trend. So that it helps you'll find a lot of trend, organizations have sort of mega trends that are pretty solid. They don't change, they're going to be here in 5 years. And at TrendWatching, we actually have 16 of these mega trends, such as how status is shifting, how sustainability is shifting, how consumers consume information, and each of these megatrends has sub-trends within it. So that's our hierarchy: 16 megatrends, close to 150 sub-trends that we're adding to all the time.
So how far out can you be as far as identifying, some of these new trends? Is it relatively near term, or how far can you kind of stretch that perspective of what's coming?
It's pretty near term. There are people who try and we don't even call ourselves futurists. I think we're almost more nowists. The world is changing so quickly that keeping up with today is extremely daunting, let alone trying to predict the future. I remember at John Chambers' closing keynote at Cisco Live, he said, I think they've even shortened their planning horizon because the rate of change has accelerated so much.
Yeah, I think that is the challenge, right? It used to be, I remember a couple of decades ago, where you would see Japanese companies, putting out 50, 100, and 150-year plans. And you're sitting there going, how in the heck do you do a 150-year plan? And then you've even got people here today that are looking at kind of that 10 to 20 years. And I'm like, look, here's a case example, right? We've been doing this show now for 12 years. We started this show before iTunes existed and before the iPhone even existed. So, so
before Facebook Live.
Or even Facebook Live, or even before Facebook, right? So you had this whole, or before Facebook became really popular. So you had this whole, I've sat here every week on this microphone, sharing with the listeners over the last 12 years. And if you go back, you can listen to some of those, the entire archives in iTunes. You can go listen to it. But it is that transition. What is that? Are you guys thinking maybe 2 years out, 3 years out?
I think we'd say 3 to 5 sort of maximum,
right.
But as I said, a lot of, and we recognize, for example, one of the most exciting clients I've worked with in the last year since moving to the US to represent TrendWatching here was the Walt Disney Imagineers. And that was just a thrilling experience on all fronts. But, it takes a long time for them to develop a new ride or to build something in their theme park. So it's not helpful for me to say that this trend only applies for the next year. So we do have to help spell out a little bit further of a roadmap, or at least the undercurrents of it that will allow them to develop, 5 years in advance.
It's funny you mentioned Disney Imagineering. I've done 2 rides with them.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we built Mission Space in Epcot, which was the HP ride. Largest centrifugal force machine outside of government use anywhere in the world.
Oh, wow.
Get ready with your air sickness bags if you do that right. And then the second one was House of the Future, which was the ride in Disneyland, looking at how do you create a house that gives guests visits to Disneyland some view of what the future is. Now, the House of the Future is no longer there. It's actually being revamped now at Disneyland in California. Mission Space is still there. But it is interesting because it is a whole different process when you're working with Disney on ride concepts to ride development, and then how long it takes to actually build it. And how do you predict it far enough so that by the time it is built, the guests still think of it as being new and interesting and exciting, etc.
Exactly. Well, I think part of the advantage of the way that we work is all of our trends are anchored to fundamental human needs. So as long as you're kind of, these fundamental needs aren't going to go away. So that's how you avoid a fad.
Yeah, so it's exactly right. I mean, it's you do have to have some form of an anchor in order to tie them back to some form of reality, so you have some confidence of what's happening and where's that going. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up our conversation with Maxwell talking about trend-driven innovation, and how do you take advantage of trends when you're thinking about your own idea, the own products and your own services that you're trying to drive. So stay right where you're at. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. If you want to connect, text the word innovate to 33444 or go to killerinnovations.com/innovate and sign up for the newsletter. With that, we'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We're here each and every Sunday, sharing with you both our lessons learned, scars earned, and giving you all the tricks and hints on how to take your idea and turn those into game-changing, breakthrough, breakout kinds of products and services in whatever industry you serve. We're continuing on in our conversation with Max Luthi. Max is the Director of Trends and Insights for TrendWatching. If you're not familiar with TrendWatching, just go out to Google, search it, you'll find it. Very popular site out there that helps or identifies and shares with its customer base, but also it makes a huge amount of their content freely available on their site about what are those new trends coming up and changes and opportunities for those of us in the innovation game to really leverage those emerging trends to create what I always refer to as the unfair advantage. If you have that ability to see what's coming and you can leverage it now, you have that ability to have that unfair advantage compared to all of your competitors that are out there. And so, Maxwell, you just recently did a book. It was actually you and 3 other people at TrendWatching, all about trend-driven innovation. So, why now? Was there something that really drove the fact of wrapping all this up in the book? You've had the content. You've had a lot of your content out on the site for quite some time.
For years, indeed, since 2002. Good question. And I was going to take sole credit for writing the book, but now that you've said there was 4 of us, no. So when we were set up in 2002, the kind of information that our founder Rainier was providing, these free trend briefings each month, was hard to get online, and we had 100% email open rate. And I'm sure you've seen with all of the work that you're doing, email open rates are hard to maintain in 2016. There is no shortage of information out there. So the value we're providing is no longer just, these are the exciting trends, these are the innovations, because you're getting a lot of that from Twitter, you're getting it from, competitor sites, you're getting it from other social channels. We wanted to help take you from those insights to actually create the products, services, marketing campaigns, and experiences. We wanted to go from insights to ideas. And we obviously couldn't do that without a sort of methodology beyond just the trends themselves. So that was something we've been working on. My colleague Delia Dumitrescu, who's based out in Vienna, she's our lead innovation architect. She helps us build these tools like our consumer trend canvas, the consumer trend radar. And we were, working with clients like American Express and Samsung and using these tools and realizing, we have this robust methodology. It doesn't take a PhD in anthropology. You don't need to be a sort of, you don't need to have a master's in trend forecasting to use it. We can empower hundreds of thousands of people, hopefully, to innovate using trends rather than just the 1,500 clients we have or the 250,000 email subscribers. We really wanted to help you get those new product ideas out of the trends that you're tracking.
So in this case, you actually are kind of almost, well, not almost, you're giving away your secret sauce.
It's
right?
yeah,
Everything you do behind the scenes, you've now put it into the book to allow anybody and everybody to take that and use it for their own purposes.
Yeah, there is nothing, we held nothing back. You could set up a competitor trend firm with that book if you had the time and patience to do it. It's all in there. I mean, we wanted to share how we scanned for trends, how we built our trend framework, and that the trend framework is really helpful for anyone who wants to get better at this, to have these mega trends that you can put your new ideas into, the new trends that you're tracking. We wanted to share how you prioritize which trends are relevant for your organization. And then my favorite section of the book is, they're creating new ideas. It's the fun part, isn't it, of innovation. So I'm sure your listeners, many of them are familiar with the business model canvas, the Alex Osterwelder, our consumer trend canvas is generously inspired by that. He likes us. He wrote the foreword in the book, and it's a really compelling way to get from the trend, to unpack it, to understand what's driving the trend, why now, and how it relates to your organization. And after just an hour or two in a workshop with this, you'll have new ideas. And it's just always a pleasure to work with, whether it's government agencies or food and beverage companies, to come up with new ideas off the back of these trends.
So just maybe really quickly, if you have a trend, how does what's your methodology to actually translate that into something that's becomes actionable from the standpoint of a innovation or ideas that come out of that?
Of course. I mean, it sort of depends on each organization. So one of the first steps we'd say is, once you've collected trends, or you're getting them from a source like ours, you need to figure out what's relevant. So you've got to filter out the trends that don't apply. So you need to really question the trend in terms of how is it mature? Is it too mature for your market? Is it not mature enough? Is it happening locally? Is it happening in your industry already? You need to ask these questions first. And once you've decided it's the right trend to innovate with, that's where the canvas really comes into its own. And I think the key thing is understanding the emerging expectations that you want to set as an innovator and not fall behind. You don't want your competitors to be heightening expectations beyond what you currently offer your customers.
Well, yeah, it's also a clever way for those that kind of position themselves as innovators to steal the market, right? Is to set that expectation, and you get everybody to go into a pause mode to wait for that expectation to become a reality. You kind of get you can choke up someone's sales funnel by giving them the opportunity to funnel that up. Is there a quick example of maybe someone who didn't get it right? I mean, kind of missed those trends that you worked with or whatever? Probably a lot, but
Yeah, you could argue, that Google Wallet was too soon. You could argue that Friendster is too soon. But we think, that there's a lot to learn from these sort of failed attempts. As long as you're looking at the human needs that they're trying to overcome and analyzing what driver of change makes the opportunity right now, you can learn from those failures.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's I think all of us could look back, those of us who've been in the innovation game for any length of time, and look back and say, oh man, I wish I'd been on top of that one just a little bit sooner. Or I run into people all the time that said, oh, I had that idea first, I had the idea for Facebook before Facebook. I'm like, well, that's great. You can have the idea. But if you don't execute on it, then the value of that is absolutely zero, right? So we're going to take this quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to pick up our conversation with Maxwell. But Maxwell, when we come back, the question I want you to think about during the commercial break is what are the top 3 emerging trends that you can share with the listener audience from the standpoint of just kind of opening up their eyes to what's new and emerging and coming out. So you're not going to want to go anywhere. You're going to stay right where you're at, because Maxwell's going to give us those top 3 trends. If you want to connect with Killer Innovations, text us the word innovate to 33444. If you're outside the United States, go to killerinnovations.com. innovate. We'll be right back after this commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. And stay right there. You're not going to want to miss this.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations, a show about innovation, creativity, and design. We are here each and every Sunday at this time on your BizTalk radio station. Normally we have guests, but I do shows every once in a while called Ask Phil. So if you've got a question that you would like to get answered on an upcoming show, just drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com, and we'll collect up all those questions and use those in an upcoming show. I think we're going to do an Ask Phil show here probably another 3 weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks. We got some great guests lined up for the next 3 or 4 shows. So you're not going to want to miss those, but if you've got a question, get it in now, and we'll get that answered during the next Ask Phil show. So, like I said, that'll be in another 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to pick up where we left off. We have Maxwell Luthi. Maxwell's Director of Trends and Insights at TrendWatching. If you're not familiar with TrendWatching, just go out and Google them. Very well-known site. Been around for a long time in the trend game as far as kind of being, that's providing that scouting function that innovators so desperately need, is that ability to have someone who's just kind of focused on looking outwards and then raising the flags when things start to emerge as far as what I would call weak signals that things are changing and new things are coming on board. So if you're not a follower of TrendWatching, get on over there, sign up, follow that, get their site loaded into your RSS news reader so that you get the updates as they post. Great site. Big fan. Been a big fan for a long time. So Maxwell, as we were going into commercial break, I gave you the challenge. The challenge is share with the listeners what are the 3 trends that you think are kind of that new emerging exciting trends that we should all be keeping an eye open for.
Of course, and it's very difficult for me to pick 3 favorites that I really, the 150 we track, I find them all so exciting, but I do have 3 particularly big themes. The first massive shift that innovators in any industry have to recognize is that traditional demographic segmentation is dead. If you're thinking about consumers as groups of millennials or using generalizations based on their gender, their age, or their race, you're going to fall far behind, because really the new trend, the end goal should be to treat, in the words of Seth Godin, actually, different people differently. Consumers expect their marketing to reach them as an individual, they expect services to reach them as an individual, and they expect physical products. So whether that's Spotify creating, a personalized playlist for every one of their millions of listeners, or something like Matchco is a beauty brand where you can take photos with your smartphone of your own skin and get a foundation customized to your skin tone, or even the programmatic marketing where, based on my Facebook interests, when I see commercials on Facebook, there's one of 100,000 videos that they're going to show me based on my interests. So that's my first question for you. Off the back of that trend of post-demographic consumerism, how are you going to target a segment of one? That should be your main goal. Sort of second big trend is, one that's been a long time coming, and really this is the holy grail of consumerism, and that's if you can achieve guilt-free consumption. So consumers are increasingly informed. They don't want to feel guilty about a product's impact on their self, on society, or the planet. So that shouldn't be too surprising to you, but you need to keep innovating in this way. The end goal is for the consumer to feel nothing but pleasure when they're interacting with your brand. And you can do that by showing them you share their values. One fantastic example recently was Everlane, the retailer. Instead of having sales on Black Friday, they actually donated the profits. They kept prices full, but they donated the profits to support their factory workers and provide them with a wellness program. So that's a company proving they care about their employees, and you feel guilt-free buying from them. And then the third big theme, and each one of these has 100 sub-trends I could go into, but the third big theme that we're looking at, we just published a briefing on, you can find online, is about the future of betterment. So in abundant societies, when you have access to most of the products and services that you need, anyone who studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs realizes we climb towards self-actualization. So consumers want to better themselves. So how can you better people? One fun sort of sub-trend in that, within that, is using virtual reality. So beyond gaming or entertainment, think about how you can help people meditate, how you can help them learn a new language, how they can become a better version of themselves. So that's my sort of third challenge for you. Treat people differently, provide guilt-free consumption of your products and experiences, and finally help them achieve that self-actualization that they desire.
So I'm going to pick on a couple of these. One is on the self-actualization piece. Mm-hmm. And is that, you talked about in the first trend, which is, segmental one. Mm-hmm. But then in the self-actualization, is that universal across the traditional demographics, or do you see it being more popular in certain subsegments?
If you're still trying to put food on the table, it's not a number one concern for you. But for middle class and above that, really consumers, they are, whether it's learning a new language, becoming more productive at work, being a better parent. I'm sure you've noticed the mindfulness craze.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Tim Ferriss.
Exactly, Tim Ferriss. I mean, Tim Ferriss is actually the poster child of self-actualization in many ways for many people, particularly in the sort of the startup sort of Silicon Valley world.
Yeah, well, Tim's whole thing is I think what Tim has done is hack how to learn and how do you reduce learning something new into the minimum number of competencies you need to have in order to be successful at any new thing.
Well, that taps into another trend. Consumers are lazy. Consumers want everything. No, I mean, we love consumers, but people want everything faster, whether it's hailing a taxi, streaming a movie, or learning a new language. They expect it to be faster. And we talk about emerging expectations. Every time a brand provides a faster way of doing something, you need to keep up with that, or you're falling behind the expectations of these lazy consumers.
Well, it is that, right? Everybody wants everything. Everybody wants something spoon-fed to them. Mm-hmm. Give me the 3 steps. I get this a lot, right? You get emails that say, hey Phil, give me the 10-step formula to go find an idea that's going to turn and create $1 billion in revenue in 4 years. And my answer is there is no formula.
Yeah.
Innovation is not formulaic. Innovation is hard work.
It's hard work.
They call it work, for a reason, right? It's hard. And people kind of think, oh my gosh, it's the serendipity effect. You slip in a bathtub, you bang your head, you go, ooh, eureka. Guess what? It's happened 0 times. Mm-hmm. And I've got products and services that are used by hundreds of millions of people around the world, still even today that I developed. And every one of those, it's hard work and it's mm-hmm. teamwork. The myth of a lone inventor is mm-hmm. bogus. Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist. So from that standpoint, the ability to take a trend and translate it, it's not a 3-step, you're done. It takes a lot of work.
No, we have 5 steps in the book, but there's no way we're eliminating hard work or risk. We're trying to reduce the work and the risk, but anyone who's eliminating it won't be innovating.
So as we wrap up here, Maxwell, what's the best way if someone wants to follow you and keep track of what you're up to?
You can find me on LinkedIn if you search for Maxwell Luthi, or Twitter. I'm actually just Max Luthi, MaxLuthy. But I would recommend, rather than following me, signing up to TrendWatching's newsletter and following @TrendWatching on Twitter. The free briefing is a great place to start with trends.
Yeah, and I would actually reinforce that. I've been a long time follower of the site. Early days of my career, I'm a little bit older, so I started before TrendWatching came around, but it was a great resource. Otherwise, everybody was trying to gather it themselves. So if you're interested in trends and what's new and emerging, you got to watch TrendWatching. And Maxwell, hey, thanks a lot. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much. For you listening to the show, do not go anywhere. Stay right there. We've got the fourth segment. I'll be sharing some thoughts and things that are coming up, but also some insights based on a few questions that I have gotten from the listeners. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take this short commercial break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network. We're covered on about 30 stations across the United States. If you can't find us and you've got a station locally that you think should be covering us, drop me a note and we'll reach out to them and get the show carried on your local station. Just let us know. With that, we're going to be back. Got to pay a few bills. We'll be right back after this commercial break on Killer Innovations.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are now, I think this is show 5 and season 12. Yes, 12 seasons now. You can go over to iTunes and check out the entire back catalog, or better yet, go to killerinnovations.com, find the search bar, and you can go back and dig through any and all possible questions you may have about innovation and creativity and product commercialization, intellectual property, corporate antibodies. If you don't know about corporate antibodies, go over and check and listen to that part of the show. There's actually a whole chapter in my book on how to deal with those in your organization who tell you your ideas are stupid. Don't listen to them. And I teach you all the tricks on how to basically do what I call jujitsu on the antibodies. How do you get them to get out of the way so that you can take your idea forward and turn it into a game-changing product? So, in this segment of the Killer Innovation Show, I usually reserve this segment to share with you some thoughts and ideas or lessons learned or things that I've recently experienced that I think could be helpful. What I'm going to share today is what I would call the 5 myths of innovation. I recently taught the Innovation Bootcamp course, and this is a segment of that course that tends to get the most response, I guess. And what it really is trying to do is knock out those things that kind of, we believe are true based on history or based on beliefs and thoughts around what is innovation and how does it come about and kind of those unspoken things that you think have to be in place for innovation. So I'm just going to do this really quickly because we've only got this segment to get through this. But I want to share with you really quickly the 5 myths of innovation. The first myth is the myth of the epiphany. This is, I'm going to slip on that bathtub, bang my head, go, eureka, and I've got this great, fully formed idea. Now, I've heard other people talk about it, and some people claim that it is. My position is that there's some form of an inspiration. When you really dig through these epiphanies, there was a problem that someone was working on that when you had the epiphany, it happened. Archimedes' epiphany of sitting in the bathtub was because he was trying to solve a problem. In the moment of sitting in the full bathtub and the water overflowing, it became the solution to the inspiration. But in reality, his brain, his subconscious had been working on it. So it's not the epiphany, it's some action that triggers an idea for the solution. So the epiphany by itself as being the standalone inspiration for an innovation, I've never experienced it, and when you really dig into it, I haven't come across one yet. Second, the myth of the fact that there's a method, right? There's this myth that there's an innovation method that if you follow the 5-step process, magically you're going to have some great game-changing innovation. I haven't found it. What I teach is what I call the framework. The method has to be developed for you as an individual and for you and your organization. Every organization is different. Don't think about the standpoint that you could take a method that's used at IDEO or 3M or Mayo Clinic Innovations team or Kroger's innovation team and think you can apply it. It's unique to every organization, and you need to go, and basically what I tell people to do is go steal from the best and then modify it and adapt it to your organization and to the way you operate and to the way the team operates. You have to go discover how that works for you, and if it does or doesn't work, or what pieces of it work, and create your own. Third myth is the lone inventor, that this is, if somebody can go off, lock themselves off in a cave, come back with these great innovations. The best innovations that I've ever been a part of weren't mine, they were part of a team. And the thing I take pride in is building those teams, not so much in the innovations as the result, but putting together the right teams that actually can go off and create these really game-changing innovations. Innovation's a team sport. It is not a lone inventor activity. It's not something that you can go off and just do on your own. And therefore, you really do need to have that team around you. The fourth myth is the best ideas win. It's not about the ideas. I've had great ideas, totally bust. What you find is an idea by itself is only part of the issues. You have to get a lot of other things right to turn that idea into a game-changing breakthrough innovation. And that includes having things like the timing. The difference between a good idea and a great idea isn't really about the technology or even the product. It's around the timing. Is the market right? Are you hitting that stride perfectly well? Look, Apple didn't create the smartphone. Palm didn't create the PDA. You can go back, Microsoft Excel was not the first spreadsheet. It's about developing those innovations and hitting the timing right. You'll find the timing is just as critically important. And there's a whole bunch of other things that get wrapped around from the standpoint of having those innovations in the right time. And the last one is the boss knows more than you. Now, I can say this, I'm a CEO, I was CTO at Hewlett-Packard. This view that as you get higher in the organization, must be correlating to your IQ is absolutely bogus. If you've got really smart people working for you, or if you are that person that's in your organization, don't assume the boss knows more. And you have to go in with the assumption that the boss will listen and give you an opportunity to voice your ideas. And if you can do that, that puts you miles ahead. So again, myth of the epiphany, myth of the myth of the method, the myth of the lone inventor, the myth of the best ideas win, and the myth that boss knows more than you. And I'll put these in the show notes so that you can go back and correlate to them. So as you wrap up this week's show, one quick favor I want to ask of you. Can you run over to iTunes and just give us a rating over there for the show? Post your comments over there. It's a great way to give that feedback. And love to hear more about your thoughts about the show. And help us spread the word. Everything we make on both the book, the show, everything we donate to charity. It's my way to pay it forward based on a request from my early mentor, Bob Davis. And so this is my way of paying it forward. And what I ask you is for you to pay it forward. Let other people know about the show. Help them take advantage of this material to generate and improve both their personal and professional career. So with that, we're going to wrap up this week's show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your Sunday, or if you're listening to this podcast on Tuesdays, for taking part of this show. Listen to us live. Check us out. Go to killinnovations.com and get all the show notes and all the past shows. With that, thanks, and we'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. biztalkradio.com.